Now, what kind of muppet buys a new M3 Max MacBook Pro when the M4 Max is available? This muppet. But there may be some method to my madness, or perhaps I've made a huge mistake. In this video, I want to answer an important question. Does a top spec M3 Max perform as well as the entry spec M4 Max? And I couldn't find a clear answer to that when I was doing my research, but I figured that even though the processor and graphics cores are individually slower on the M3 generation, if there are more of them, would that even things out? Here's what you need to know. This 14-inch MacBook Pro here has the full version of the M3 Max chip with 16 CPU cores and 40 GPU cores. And it has a massive 64 gigabytes of memory and a 1 terabyte SSD. Notice I said full version of the M3 Max, and that's because Apple also sells a binned version of the Max chips in the 14-inch MacBook Pro. And there's quite a difference between the binned and the non-binned chips. In the case of the M4 Max, you lose 2 CPU cores and 8 GPU cores. Now here's a very quick explainer if you're not familiar with the term binned chip. The silicon fabrication process doesn't yield perfect results every time. There's always some variance in the performance of the chips. And if a chip doesn't meet the specifications set by the manufacturer, perhaps because it can't boost clock frequency reliably on one of its CPU cores, then the manufacturer will switch off cores and sell it as a lesser or binned model. Some chip manufacturers use different product names for these binned variants, but Apple uses the same name, which is probably not that helpful to consumers. So if you buy the base spec M4 Max 14-inch MacBook Pro, what you're getting is a binned version of the chip with 2 of the CPU cores and 8 of the GPU cores switched off. Oh, and your memory bandwidth is lower as well. It's still a crazy fast chip though, so why did I even consider this older generation model? Simply price. This is a certified refurbished machine direct from Apple, and that means I saved £400 over the price of that entry spec M4 Max. Certified refurbished machines come to you looking brand new, and the only difference is the outer box. It's got the same warranty, same return period, and you can buy Apple Care, just the same. Now, these top spec 14-inch models are fairly rare on the UK refurbished store, but I'm guessing that some folks might also be evaluating used models or new old stock that's been discounted. For me, £400 is a decent discount, and this particular model has a key benefit: 64 gigs of RAM. And you can't actually spec the binned M4 Max with more than 36 gigs. So let's put the specs up side by side. The M3 Max has 2 additional CPU cores, and these are performance cores, and it has 8 additional graphics cores. So is that enough to match the binned M4 Max? You'll notice that the memory bandwidth is basically the same, the SSD is the same size, but we do have that extra 28 gigabytes of memory, and that's a lot of extra memory. So we'll do some benchmarks to test the difference, but first, here's what I'm expecting to see. The M4 generation has much improved single core performance. We know that, so the M4 Max will clearly be much quicker in that area. Multi-core performance might be a closer battle though, due to that binned M4 Max having 2 fewer cores. Graphics performance will probably be pretty close. The M4 generational improvement was good, but this M3 Max has 8 additional graphics cores compared to that binned M4 Max. The neural engine on the M4 generation, that's a fairly healthy step up, depending on the type of machine learning or AI tasks that you're running. But I'd expect it to perform a good deal better than the M3 generation overall. And for video work, the M4 generation finally got an upgrade to the video encoders and decoders. So if you work entirely with codecs like H.264 and H.265, it will render just a little bit faster than the previous generation machines. And we can't overlook Thunderbolt 5, which comes on the M4 Max generation. That's a significant improvement over Thunderbolt 4, opens the door to some very fast external connectivity. So let's look at the benchmarks. Here are the Geekbench 6 single-core CPU results, and there's no surprises here. The newer core design in the M4 generation is about 23% faster, and that is a big uplift that I was entirely expecting. In real-world use though, it won't be quite such an obvious gap because the M3's score is already very fast. I'm more interested in the multi-core performance. And again, the binned M4 Max still beats the full M3 Max by about 8 or 9%, which is not a massive gap, but it is a win nonetheless. Now, of course, Geekbench is a benchmark comprised of lots of different tests. What if we look at a more focused, sustained load? In Cinebench 2024, the binned M4 Max wins again. This time it's around 12% faster. That's actually great news for buyers because it means whichever version of the M4 Max you buy, it's going to offer faster CPU performance than both of the M3 Max chips. What about graphics though? Let's take a look at the Metal score in Geekbench 6. And here the M3 Max with the 40 GPU cores actually slightly edges out the binned M4 Max with its 32 GPU cores. But we're talking about a difference of less than 2%, so in real terms, we can safely say that they are evenly matched. Just bear in mind that the results that I'm showing you here are from 14-inch MacBook Pros. The 16-inch MacBook Pro has slightly better thermal design and better cooling, so it can achieve slightly higher results. Now, considering that graphics performance is often the main reason for choosing a Max chip, this is the most interesting result for me. I'm going to be using my machine for video editing and high-resolution photo editing. Those are two workloads where GPU performance is really important. But of course, some users doing this same type of work will be using AI tools that run on the neural engine or NPU that's inside the Max chip. So how does the M3 generation compare with M4 here? And just to be clear, there's no real difference in the neural engine whether the chip is binned or not. So let's take a look at the 3 Geekbench AI tests, starting with single precision, where M4 has around a 24% advantage. Though I should say that this sort of workload would run about 4 times faster on the GPU. If we move to half precision, the M4 is still offering around 24% more performance. For the quantized result, the gap widens considerably. The M4 now offers around 53% more performance, and that's huge. So it's safe to say that if you rely heavily on machine learning and AI tools in your workflow, specifically those that make use of the neural engine, the M4 generation is going to be the better choice. But we do need to consider the primary reason for choosing an older machine, and that's cost. If costs are equal, you'd surely go with the new generation. You'd be crazy not to. But in my scenario, the entry spec 14-inch M4 Max MacBook Pro is 14% more expensive than the price I paid for this refurbished model. In the areas that matter to me, it doesn't offer 14% more value. Remember, multi-core performance is between 8 and 12% better, but this machine very slightly edges the binned M4 Max when it comes to graphics performance. Of course, the M4 Max model comfortably wins on single-core CPU performance and neural engine performance, but since these are less critical to my specific workflow, I'm okay with that. Thunderbolt 5 versus Thunderbolt 4 is another interesting question. Of course, I'd like to have the latest standard, but again, I need to look at my own use case, both now and over the next 3 years, which is how long I expect to have this machine. I don't have any Thunderbolt 5 peripherals yet, and it's not like the market is awash with options at the moment. That, of course, will change, but I already have extremely fast external storage with Thunderbolt 4, way faster than I actually need for my work. And I don't typically connect my laptop to more than one external display because I also have a desktop workstation in my home office. And then there's that memory difference. With this machine, I get 64 gigs, and that's 78% more than you get with the binned M4 Max model. Upgrading from 36 gigs to 64 would cost another £400, if Apple would let you do it. But they don't. You also have to upgrade to the full M4 Max chip, which costs another £300 on top of that. Naturally, that full spec M4 Max machine would comfortably outperform this M3 Max, but it would also be significantly more money, 39% more than the cost of this certified refurbished M3 Max. In fairness, I only had 32 gigs of memory in my M1 Max laptop that this one replaces, and that's never been a limiting factor for the work I used it for. But I'm trying to think ahead and ensure that I've got plenty of headroom for ever-increasing resolutions of video and photos that I'm working with. Will the additional memory be a benefit to me in the next 3 years? I don't actually know the answer to that question. So what do you think? Did I make a sensible choice, or should I have spent the extra on that entry specification M4 Max model? And just to add a final twist to the tale and mess with your head, because it's definitely messing with mine, that entry spec 14-inch M4 Max MacBook Pro is discounted on Amazon and can be had for about £80 more than I paid for this one. And of course you can add Apple Care, and if you're an Amazon Prime member you get that great return policy. links in the description. So if you factor in that value change, does my decision make any sense at all? Probably not. I am still within the return window on this, so you tell me, what would you do? I hope this video was useful or entertaining to you in some way. Thanks as always for watching and for your kind support of the channel. Thanks for putting up with my croaky voice today. I'll see you again soon for some more geekery.